Un mot sur Todd LARSON. Il est connecté? Parfait. Todd LARSON, le topo sera fait en anglais. Mais donc, Todd m'a promis de parler relativement lentement. Et puis, donc, Pascal Bourré a réussi à obtenir qu'il y ait un sous-titrage en anglais, ce qui peut faciliter la compréhension. Todd a une carrière qui est exemplaire de ce qui peut se passer aux États-Unis. Todd était infirmier de bloc opératoire dans les années 80 à la Mise. Il a très rapidement eu des responsabilités de management au sein des différents blocs opératoires. Il a progressé. Il a été responsable du bloc opératoire du navire hôpital HMS, je ne sais plus son nom, mais vous savez qu'aux États-Unis, il y a 2 navires hôpitaux, l'un sur la côte ouest, l'un sur la côte est. Et il a notamment été responsable de ce bloc lorsqu'il y a eu l'attentat du 9/11. Et donc, il a été aux premières loges pour accueillir les blessés, parce que ce CHU flottant avait été, donc, qui est basé à Baltimore en principe, s'est déplacé près de New York. Il a eu ensuite des responsabilités dans la simulation au Nicholson Center, qui est un très gros centre de formation en Floride. Et il est maintenant responsable de tout ce qui est formation par la simulation pour les chirurgiens, pour la robotique, pour les infirmiers, pour tout ce qui est paramédicaux ou personnel, tout ce qui est en santé, pour le Advanced Health Hospitals, qui est les plus grosses congrégations. C'était une congrégation au départ, donc un but non lucratif de santé aux États-Unis. Il regroupe 45 hôpitaux sur le territoire américain. Et donc, Todd est responsable de la formation de tout ce qui est aussi fait par simulation dans ce énorme groupe d'hôpitaux. Donc, Todd, I think you are with us. Can you hear me?
Yes, good afternoon. I can hear you.
Thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your experience about surgical training, especially in robotics. I just talked a few words about your curriculum vitae and what you are doing now at Advanced Health with a high responsibility in simulation for different jobs, including only the surgeons, but for all types of professions. So thanks, Todd. It's your turn to talk. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Let me share my screen here. I hope everybody can see it. Good afternoon to everybody in Europe, and thank you for the honor in presenting on for letting me present on training in robotic surgery. Let's just get rolling. I know we all have a busy day. So as you can see here, this map represents the current install base for Intuitive Surgical across the world. This is an older slide because obviously they've been impacted by the pandemic. So of March of last year, you can see that there were about 5,600 plus robotic systems installed throughout the world, the most of them being here in the United States. So as you can understand, the training need here is great, and we are constantly training people in robotics. Unfortunately, there are no real standardized universal training standards for robotic surgical training. Although there have been many attempts, it just hasn't really come to fruition, and there are a lot of reasons why, and I can't really go into all of those reasons why in the short period of time I have with you. However, if we were going to set up standards, they would include technical information or technical system training on the actual robotic platform, how you would set up and dock and troubleshoot these robotic platforms, so the technical knowledge required to do that. Obviously, the skills development to utilize this platform in a clinical setting, and then a demonstration of safety, or that you're validated to safely use this robotic platform on a patient. So this really brings us to how we credential, privilege, and recertify our surgeons here in the United States. Given that we have no real standards, each individual institution is kind of developing their own requirements. That is really driven by state licensure and practice requirements within each given state here in the US. Also position statements from our professional organizations and surgical societies. And of course, our Food and Drug Administration really drives standards here as well. So all of these factors are taken into consideration as the individual hospitals or institutions develop their training standards. So based on that, we have a components of credentialing and privileging that our surgeons go through and our physicians go through at each individual hospital. And I just want to speak to the different privileging tracks as it relates to robotics. And we really have a lot of different situations here. We have the experienced surgeon who's fellowship and residency trained and wants to get into robotic surgery. So there is a specific path for training for that surgeon. We have our surgeons coming out of residency and fellowship training that would like to practice in robotics, and there's a path for them. And then there's a path for the surgeon that has no formal residency or fellowship training. So you can see that we have a little bit of a challenge here in developing different training paths and privileging requirements at each individual institution. So what are those requirements and what do they make up? Well, most of our hospitals want you to have some kind of manufacturer's online training, whether that's through Intuitive or one of the other new robotic platform manufacturers that are entering the market. This would include a case observation of the surgical procedure utilizing that platform. In most cases, that's the Intuitive Da Vinci robot. Successful completion of some kind of simulation training. Some institutions are very specific in the type of exercises they want you to demonstrate your competency in. Some just want you to prove in some way, shape, or form that you've had some kind of simulation training. So it really varies from hospital to hospital. They all seem to want you to go through some type of formal course, and that's a demonstration of your technical knowledge and competency. And that's usually represented by some type of course completion certificate, usually through the manufacturer, because that's who's providing most of the training right now here in the United States. And that would include completion of an animate laboratory where they've done actual procedures on an animate model. So as we move into the world of digital surgery, I think there's, well, I know there's knowledge that we all have to have as we expand into the world of digital surgery and robotics. Obviously, you have to have that cognitive and theoretical knowledge, your basic minimally invasive surgery concepts, general platform knowledge of the technology, and then the technical aptitude to apply that technology and set it up and troubleshoot it, and then finally a way to apply it safely in patient care or in surgical practice. So I'm going to speak to a little bit about the training that's being provided here in the United States. A lot of the training being provided here is by the manufacturer, and the king of training right now here in the United States is Intuitive Surgical. They have 3 different training sites here in the United States, one in Sunnyvale, California, Houston, Texas, and their main surgical training center is in Atlanta, Georgia. That facility was specifically built for training surgeons and for marketing their platform. We've also had CMR Surgical here in Florida conducting training. Although the system is not approved for use here in the US, they were doing some initial training here back the last few years. And their plan is to come back here once their platform is approved by our FDA, and the same would go for Medtronics. Most of the courses that the industry does is really heavily on the system and orienting the surgeon to the surgical platform. That includes some simulation and some animate work, but it's really a 1 to 2 day course. You're not getting a whole lot of time, and it's very rushed. Then you have residency training. Most of our programs here in the United States have some type of robotic training built into their residency curriculums. A lot of the training paths were developed by by Intuitive Surgical. And Intuitive Surgical provides this training path to these residency programs to give them a means to document this training. So once they graduate from residency, they have a means to apply for privileges at whatever hospital they plan to practice at. So they've developed a pretty sound documentation path and way to prove that you've been thoroughly trained in robotic surgery. Then we have the private facilities, and I can speak to our training center here at the Nicholson Center. We have a 4-day program that is fully accredited for continuing medical education. And we just recently got approval through Advent Health University to provide a certificate of completion if you complete all of the academic requirements as well for a certificate in robotic surgery. The program here is very heavy on system orientation, very heavy on simulation and animate work, and the course is 4 days in length. So there's a long days and a lot of time spent on the platform. So you get a great experience while you're here, and we obviously have graduation standards, so they have to meet those standards in order to graduate. Let me move on to my next slide here. We do a lot of simulation. So when we talk about evaluating training and evaluating performance, simulation is one of these factors that we look at. We use it a lot in our courses out here. It has really become a stable training methodology in robotic surgery. I think it is really has a great future. We're learning more and more and more of what we can do with simulation, particularly in virtual reality. And it is fantastic for developing core skills and maintaining skills. You can see here, this is a representation from one of our courses where you can see the first day of surgeons actually using simulation. You can see they're working at the novice level. We had one surgeon that was overachiever and was already competent. And then you look at day 4, how much they've improved. And so it is, this has been true for pretty much every course that we've done. We've seen this level of improvement, and these waveforms and the bell curve really doesn't change. You see them really here on the lower end, and then you see them over the peak at the end of the course. Doing very, very well. The other type of method that we use to evaluate and train our surgeons is we use the Fundamentals of Robotic Surgery DOME, or we just call it the DOME. This was developed as part of an overall effort to develop some type of universal training standard. And it hasn't been as widely adopted as we would have liked, but we use it actively here in Florida as part of our overall training curriculum. This is a physical model. It looks at the following exercises down here that we focus on for developing psychomotor skills. This platform can also be found in the simulator in virtual reality, so you can use either a physical model or a virtual model. We use both here, and it's pretty effective for evaluating and training core skills in psychomotor development. The other things that we're using is video review, and video review is gotten very big here through a company called CSATS, which is a Johnson & Johnson company. On all of our platforms here in Advent Health, we have a video recording device that allows the surgeon to record a portion of their video, capture that video, send it to an expert surgeon for review. They will review the performance of the individual surgeon, provide them a score, qualitative feedback, and some improvement tools for improving their practice. Most of these surgeons that are part of this group are all experts in the world and have done hundreds and hundreds of robotic cases. And so essentially what you're getting is real-time telemetry and real-time consultation. And it's getting more and more popular, and we're using it as a stable part of our practice here within our system. And then finally, we do the animate laboratory, and we use what's called is a GEAR model, a GEARS model, or Global Evaluative Assessment of Robotic Skills tool to evaluate surgeons during a live performance. It's the same thing the CSATs experts use for evaluating performance in video as well. This shows the tool here on the left, and we're looking at these areas for scoring, and that includes depth perception, bimanual dexterity, efficiency, autonomy, robotic control, and then control of your third arm. You can see that we provide definitions of how they're to be scored. So inter-rater reliability is fairly good, and it eliminates some subjectivity, but it's still pretty objective in the way we evaluate our surgeons. So this brings to the question liability, and this always comes up, and it's something that we take very seriously here because of the litigation nature of our culture here in the United States. Essentially, this case that was outlined in JAMA in April of 2015 basically says and states that it's the hospitals and surgeons' responsibility to ensure that they're adequately trained. So really the hospital takes on that liability, and so does the surgeon, but mostly the institution. So that's why you're starting to see many hospitals have pretty strict standards in regards to training and maintaining surgical skill. And so that brings me to recertification. So this is really just taken out of our policies and procedures here at Advent Health that really outlines basic training that's required for our surgeons. I just want to point out number 4. We have a minimal standard of the number of procedures that surgeons must perform each year. If they do not hit that benchmark, then in order to maintain their privileges, they must demonstrate competency via some type of simulator. And we have simulation exercises that they must demonstrate competency in. They must be peer reviewed for 10 surgical procedures from somebody in good standing with privileges in our hospital. And then they have to complete 10 hours of continuing medical education in order to maintain their privileges. So this is currently practiced within our institution, and a lot of other institutions within the United States are moving down the same path. So this begs the question. A good friend of mine, Dr. Roger Smith, used to do the Robot of the Day on LinkedIn. And as of 2019, this shows all of the different companies that were interested in putting out robotic platforms on the market. And in 2019, that was 67 total companies. So this begs the question, can we really develop any universal way to train? And I think it's going to be really difficult because all of these robots are vastly different. And even if we had 4 or 5 hit the market, it's still a lot of training to do, and it's probably going to be platform specific in the future. So there's going to be a lot of different training requirements now and into the future. So how do we slay that dragon or move forward? Well, I think we're going to have to leverage some future technologies, obviously simulation and obviously virtual reality. They're really going, but technology like machine learning and video review, these technologies are really going to be a big part of our future of robotic training and in digital surgery in general. These are my references. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to present on the training that we're doing here in the United States and kind of our standards. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you very much.
Une question oui.
Jean-Pierre-Henri. Thank you. Todd, you showed us a slide about recertification. If a physician does not meet all these criteria, does that mean he's not authorized to use the robot anymore?
That's correct.
Oh, just another question. I was surprised not to see any elements about non-technical skills. Do you still work on them?
We do, but for purposes of time and all of the information I need to cover, I didn't really go into the non-technical skills, i.e. team training and other things that we're doing on the non-technical side for communication and human factors. Those are all covered within our curriculum. Like you said, in the auspices of time, I wanted to make sure that I covered all the material.
Okay, thanks. In the 4-day curriculum, that's correct?
It is. It's included. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, Todd.
Hello, Todd. Maxime Ross. We met a few years ago at Innovation Training in Nicholson Center. I'm very glad to see you. And I remember last time we talked, you were also mentioning the importance of the data you were able to gather, all the stats you had. So I would like you just to present a little about the number of people, the number of trainings you had the chance to train in Nicholson Center, and how were you able to collect all this kind of data, which is, I think, really the key in order to obtain all the assessments and the understanding on how to train better the people on robotic.
Well, the nice thing about simulation and working in the simulator is that everybody can, we can capture all of their data, performance data, and it's all objective, which is great. So at the end of each course, we just download all of that information and all of that data. As to the number of surgeons we've trained, I think we're well over 350, almost 400 surgeons we've trained, despite the pandemic. We were still able to keep rolling with some of our courses here within the United States. And we've added in the operating room staff as well. So we're not just training surgeons now, we're also training the OR team as well.
Henri Coudan.
Well, my name is Henri Coudan, and I am the past dean of the medicine faculty of the University of Lorraine in France, and I create with my friend Jacques Hubert the laboratory of surgery in my faculty. It was very expensive for me and for my institution to create it. That it's a comment. The second, I wish to congratulate you for your wonderful presentation. And my question is about the medical legal problems you evoke very quickly in one of your last slides. So my question is, first, is it in United States now mandatory for a surgeon to obtain a diploma, an official diploma, to use robotic management in a surgery theater? And the second question is it mandatory to obtain an insurance to provide medical legal aspect by using robotic procedures? And I apologize for my terrible English language.
That's okay, not a problem. So legal aspects are always an issue here in the United States. So hospitals are taking more of a proactive approach as to how we handle that here. So to answer your first question, the training standards coming in the door for privileging our surgeons have, I would say, increased over the last 3 to 5 years. So if they're not meeting those standards for the institution, they're not going to get privileges to practice at all. The other thing is we are reviewing cases. So quality review of surgical performance is happening more and more, particularly in our institution where we're using CSATs, the video review by experts, to see how well our surgeons are performing, and putting in the minimal case requirement each year for our surgeons, I think has improved their performance in general. Although most of our surgeons here at Advent Health, perform thousands of procedures every year, and we really don't have a lot of surgeons that minimally practice with robotics in general. Where I see it going in the future, I see us requiring more and more training and scrutinizing it even more, particularly follow-on training and maintenance of skills. And I also see us, and we've already started, as new robotic platforms enter the market, we are going to have platform-specific training. So there'll be training for the Da Vinci robot, training for the CMR robot, training for the Medtronic robot. It will all be separate, and they will all have separate privileging requirements as it stands now. I hope I answered all your questions there.
Thank you very much. Hello, can you tell us who pays for the this certification and training? Is it self-funded by your health system, or do you charge the applicants tuition fees, and do other organizations in the US do the same as you do?
So our financial model for training our surgeons internally, there's no charge. We fund that through our budget, our annual budgets here every year. So we train our own surgeons. Any applicants coming from outside of our system, we do charge them a tuition fee that includes the instruction and obviously food and laboratory fees and things like that. And most of our courses are sold out. So we only train 10 to 15 surgeons at a time, and that's it. And then we push them onto to the next course. We usually have a waiting list, and even despite the pandemic, we still have a waiting list to train everybody. So good problem to have. As for the robots itself, we have an agreement with Intuitive Surgical, so we own a couple of them, and Intuitive Surgical provides the other robots for us because of the volume of training we do just for our internal staff. So it's an agreement between our organization and Intuitive Surgical. So right now we have 5 robots that are dedicated just for training.
S'il n'y a pas d'autres questions, thank you very much, Mr. LARSON.